This is News Talk 980 CKNW.
All right. If you're thinking, hey, it seems a little bit like that movie Groundhog Day, well, you can be forgiven because the OECD has just released their economic growth forecast for Canada.
And it's now a familiar story, but what does it mean to you and I? It's a little bit confusing. So let's bring in Michael Campbell. He's the host of Money Talks. You can hear it weekends here on CKNW. Michael, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, I would think that Bill Murray should actually be delivering this for me because, once again, I mean, how many times really have we read that the projections for Canada's growth has been downgraded again and global growth downgraded again? I mean, that is literally the overwhelming story for about 5 years.
No kidding. So what are they saying this time?
Sorry, I should give the news. 1.2% this year. They're anticipating our growth. 2.1% next year. That's 7 years in a row of under 3%. And as they say, they just keep on edging lower.
So what is the big problem here that we need to be looking out for?
Well, they also reduce global growth, and I think that's also part of the picture because we're seeing, global growth down. Easy for me to say. Also, that means demand for economic goods and services are down, and they're really worried about this rise of protectionism. The anti-free trade kind of movement that you're seeing in the presidential election, for example, with both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump saying, talking the protectionist game, trying to get some political brownie points. Ms. Clinton's even more shocking because she called the Trans-Pacific Trade Deal the gold standard, and now 2 years later is completely reversed on it for no reason other than it's political.
Hey, Mike,
that's what they're worried about.
Hey, Mike, can I just ask this for a second? When we see two presidential candidates both, really touting the importance of bringing jobs back to their countries, are we seeing this in other countries around the world? Because there seems to be, like you said, with that trade protectionism of wanting those jobs back in their own countries instead of sending them offshore.
Yeah, well, I think the problem is, though, that the real root of the challenge when you talk about the hollowing out of the middle class and all that is technological change. I mean, we've lost just tons of manufacturing jobs thanks to technology. And that's the big story, and they're not going to be changing that. You also notice nobody ever talks about changing the educational system, which would be the first place I'd start if I want to make sure I prepare people for the kind of world that's coming to them. Because, I mean, it doesn't matter where you're talking. You're going to have a real change in the work environment. And we talk about unskilled labor. It's coming right through to law, to medicine, for example. We have Watson, the computer, doing diagnoses for cancer 4 times faster and more accurate than individual doctors. So you're going to see the advent of more technology at all levels. And again, this hasn't been the problem. The other thing that neither of them talk enough about is they could change some tax laws for corporations so that they can repatriate the cash back to the U.S., and that would have a tremendous impact. I think we all remember when Tim Hortons was bought by Burger King, and Burger King immediately then moves their head office to Canada for tax reasons. And so they're not addressing any of those real root causes. It's kind of an easy one. Xenophobia is easy when people are losing their jobs. To blame it on foreigners. That's some time-trusted kind of approach to things. But you're not going to find too many economists who agree with it.
So many things, really, that are affecting the way we live these days. What else do we have to worry about?
Well, they're worried about those kind of things, but I think we still don't have on the agenda. And we have all these councils or these expert panels talking about stimulating economic growth. Well, you know what? We got too much regulation and we got high taxation. And we got that throughout Europe. You've got that, as I just mentioned, in the corporate side in the U.S., because keep in mind, we have record low interest rates. We have a Canadian dollar discounted 25+%. You've got billions being spent in stimulus, and it hasn't been enough. And that's because I think their countermeasures are things like overregulation. But we make a mistake when we talk about the feds or the province. It's all 3 levels: municipal, federal, and provincial combined.
Let me ask you about this. The OECD, are apparently concerned about Canada's housing market as well.
Yeah, that's another old story. I think that must have been in Act 2 of Groundhog Day with that one, because I'll give you an example. TransUnion is a credit service. They say that a 1/4 point rise in interest rates will hurt 700,000 Canadians. If interest rates rise just 1%, they'll push 1 million Canadians into credit problems. That's what they're looking at. And look at BC. If we get a slowdown in our housing market, and we'll have to see it over the next month or two of stats, well, that's going to have a real impact on our overall economic growth. Look at what's happened in Alberta. I mean, they have these huge vacancy rates right now. problems with the commercial market. Yeah, we can't afford to have the housing market slow down too much.
You talk about it being an old story, and it's a bit like crying wolf in a way, because we've been hearing these warnings for years.
Yeah, you're absolutely right on with that. At some point, they're going to be right. I mean, we've had these couple of advantages. One, we've got in-migration from other parts of Canada. We've got foreign capital moving in. I mean, we get 2,500 new people moving into Vancouver and the Lower Mainland every month. Now, those are the numbers I watch, because if that starts slowing down, we've got a problem. That's one of the problems for Alberta's real estate market, in that people have started to leave, especially those who had worked in the oil patch, looking for jobs. Well, that is certainly not the recipe for high demand for real estate. But we have had so far, and the numbers have kept up, big in-migration. The foreign capital looks like it slowed down quite a bit in August, so we'll have to see how it plays out. But that's going to be the real key, because that's what saved Vancouver, and that's what propelled Vancouver, along with record low interest rates, to much higher market prices.
All right, that is Michael Campbell, the host of Money Talks, Canada's top-rated financial show. Hear it here weekends on CKNW. Mike, always a pleasure. We'll chat to you next week.
My pleasure.
Vancouver's News, Vancouver's Talk. This is News Talk 980.